All right, well, welcome to the fourth week of second form Latin. Let's begin in a word of prayer. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus. Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen. In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Okay, so this week we'll be doing lesson 3, second declension, adjectives, and then we'll also learn more about dative of indirect object, which we've seen a little bit in first form Latin, but it'll be a good chance to delve into that a little more deeply. And if you notice at the top of page 14, so this lesson is on pages 14 and 15, we have this saying ad astra per aspera, which means to the stars through difficulties. There's a little bit more about this saying at the bottom of page 15, where it says this phrase, or the phrase ad astra per aspera, is one of many medieval and modern Latin slogans that use the phrase ad astra, which means to the stars, to the heights of glory, basically. So the reason it has aspera is because great feats of accomplishment can only be attained through difficulties of hard work and the struggles of life. And it's also mentioned that ad astra per aspera is the motto of the state of Kansas. So maybe you live in Kansas and this is your state motto and you never knew that. Now this word aspera we'll learn about in our vocabulary with asper a little bit later in this lesson. So anyway, maybe commit this to memory and it will become invaluable for you someday. When you're ready, go to the next slide. Okay, so you have on page 14 this chart that shows how to decline these. And we're just beginning with the singular on this side, on this slide, and then we'll move to the plural on the next slide. But these are called adjectives. And think for a second, look at the chart and look at the slide if you want to, and try to figure out why it's called an adjective. And if what you're thinking is that the nominative masculine singular ends in then you're correct. That's exactly why. So the trick to these, they decline just like first, second declension adjectives and nouns. They have the same endings, everything with the exception of nominative singular masculine, which gets contracted in all the other forms. And so I've highlighted, or I've put in red, the genitive singular masculine with the stem integri. So we have integer, integri, integro, integrum, integro for the masculine singular. Integra, integre, integre, integram, integra for the feminine singular. And integrum, integri, integro, integrum, integro. So since these are adjectives, you'll see when we get to the vocabulary how you will have to distinguish what the stem would be. You remember with nouns of the second declension, first declension, all of them, each of the 5 declensions, how you find the stem is you cut off the I, or you cut off the A, or you cut off the is, or the us. However you find the stem, it's always involving the genitive singular. But in these, because they're adjectives, they're listed a little bit differently in any dictionary that you might have, including what is provided in your book, in your second form Latin book, and with the vocabulary at the bottom of page 14. So you've got to notice that with these, well, what it is, we'll talk more about it when we get to the vocabulary, but all that's listed is the nominative singular of each of the genders. So you'll see integer, integra, integrum, and you'll have to notice that the kind of drops out, it contracts, and then you'll know that, okay, so the stem is integr. It's with the GR and not an ending or not a vowel there. There's a few, so it's a little bit tricky because there's a few that retain the at the end, and so the better that you can memorize these during this lesson, the more valuable that will be for you going forward. It'll be a lot easier. But I think once you understand how these are working, it'll seem very easy to you. And you can tell everything except masculine singular has the endings that you would expect from any other first, second declension adjective. So have a good look at the singular, maybe practice it a few times, and then when you're ready, go to the next slide and we'll look at the plural. So here we have the plural, and it looks just like you would expect: integri, integrorum, integris, integros, integris, integre, integrarum, integris, integras, integris, integra, integrorum, integris, integra, integris. So as you saw on the last slide, the only weird little thing about these is the nominative singular masculine. So once you can see how this contracts, you'll be able to decline these just based on your knowledge that you've had before. And you haven't seen these yet, but what's nice is once you get to learn these, it opens you up to a broader range of vocabulary. There's some main ones, and they're the ones that are listed in our vocabulary this week, that are the most important in all of Latin. They're the most common. They're the ones that you'll see. And so try to understand this, take a minute or two, and really work on going over the plural and say it several times, recite it, and then after you've done that, you'll be ready to move to the next slide. See you there. Okay, so before we get into the vocabulary, maybe have a look at these two bullet points up above between the chart and the vocabulary on page 14. And the first one talks about how everything I was just explaining on the previous slides, how the endings to these types of adjectives are just like bonus aum, the model adjective that we have for first, second declensions. And that there's some with the there, almost like pueri, if you remember. So now the thing to do is let's try to notice. I'm not going to tell you at first. I want you to just look at the vocabulary for a minute and try to notice which ones retain the E in there. And that means retain it not in the nominative singular, but in the other forms. So where you would have eri, erro, erum, erro, continuing with the declension of some of these. So the first one we have, we'll take a look at these one at a time. You probably spotted the ones that retain the E already. So let's see how these other ones contract. We have dexter, dextra, dextrum, which means right or right hand. We have sinister, sinistra, sinistrum, left or left hand. And so that seems a little bit strange when somebody's called a sinister person or something like this, a left-handed man. Sinister vir, left-handed man. Integer, integra, integrum, whole or uninjured. Now, if you continue with form Latin and you end up eventually reading Julius Caesar's Gallic War, which is basically the subject matter of the book 2 in the Henley series, which this form Latin sort of feed into that. This is an important word: integer, integra, integrum, whole or uninjured. And they give us some derivatives for each of these words, except a few of them where there aren't any derivatives in English. But excuse me, integral and integer are both of those are derivatives for this particular word, integer. Important word. It may not seem like it at first, but it will be when you need a Caesarian vocabulary. And then pulcher, pulcra, pulcrum means beautiful. Also a very common word in Latin. Sacer, sacra, sacrum, sacred. This is sacred. And so if you read church Latin, or the church fathers, and even quite a bit in classical Latin, you'll see this word. And as you notice, all of them, each one that we've covered so far, talking about these, has had this contraction. So sacer becomes sacra, sacrum. Sacred and sacrifice are derivatives. And then we have eger, egra, egrum, which means sick or ill, which could apply to me right now. I have a little bit of a cold. You might have heard it. I'll try not to cough during these, but I can't promise. It just attacks me when I'm not expecting it sometimes. Eger, egra, egrum, sick or ill. And then we have piger, pigra, pigrum, which means lazy. And again, the contraction happens where the E goes away for the stem. And this means lazy, lazy. So don't be lazy. Here's the one from the saying at the beginning: asper, aspera, asperum, sharp or harsh. And you'll see later in Latin that adjectives can be used as nouns also. So we had aspera, aspera, and we translated this as difficulties, harshnesses, possibly. But think about the fact that it was plural, and we had aspera. And what gender would this be? What gender would be aspera plural? Not aspere, but aspera. And say it to somebody. So, okay, I think you probably did. And what you said was that it's neuter, and you'd be correct. Neuter plural, aspera. And then think about what case should it be. You've probably by now learned that per is always requiring the accusative. And it's neuter because it's just saying difficult things, harsh things, sharp things. I don't know if that would apply, but difficulties is how this said, just things that are difficult. Here also notice the asper, asper, it doesn't contract, it keeps the there. So this is one that I hope you marked out at the beginning. You noticed that it kept the and the same goes for this one, miser, misera, miserum, which means wretched, miserable. You can also say eventually, but for now, try to stick to these words, I guess. Wretched, and it will make things look much easier for your mother and your father to grade these, because when you fill out your worksheets and when you're taking quizzes and tests, these will be the words that are used. So, and I'm meaning the English words. So for miser, you're going to think, should I put miserable? Which eventually you can. I think in the Henley series that gives you both options, but try to stick to these. So memorize miser, misera, miserum as wretched. And then we have liber, libera, liberum, which means free, free. And again, the stays there, liber, libera, liberum, free. This one also has liberty as a derivative. I think it's a very easy one to remember, along with miser. And so you sometimes need to make up your own little connections in order to memorize these, but make all of this your own, and it'll be a lot easier for you, and you will embed it deeper in your memory, I think. So, okay, that's enough for this part of the vocabulary. At the top of page 15, there's some more things we're going to talk about involving vocabulary, with words that are very similar to this last one, liber, libera, liberum. But before that, I would like you to try, and it may be part of your assignment anyway to do in the worksheets, but I'd like you to try to do some of this declining of these, and make sure if you have these, for example, that keep the these. that you're noticing that. That's the most important thing. The endings should be easy at this point, but keeping these on all of these. And we will do one, I think I have as an example, a different one here on the next page, on the next slide. It's not one of these ers, it's one where it contracts, I think. And so we'll go over that so that you can see how to decline and get a little practice yourself and see how to decline a different one other than the model. And then you might want to watch that before you do the workbook pages, but it's sort of up to you how comfortable you're feeling with this. So when you're ready, go to the next slide. Okay, I chose piger, pigra, pigrum. And as I was saying before, when you see these listed in dictionaries, you're going to just see the nominative singulars of the three genders, and then you have to, from this, figure out the stem, rather than getting it handed to you by getting the genitive singular. So right here, you can see pigra, pigrum. That's where you'd be looking. And you notice the is gone. So it's not pigera, it's pigra. Not pigera or pigerum. It's pigra and pigrum. Piger is the first one, and that contracts. So let's see. This is for the singular. You would have piger, pigri, pigro, pigrum, pigro, pigra, pigre, pigre, pigram, pigra, pigrum, pigri, pigro, pigrum, pigro. Now, if you were at all confused with this, then I would say go back and make sure that you can distinguish what you're supposed to do. But these endings, once you notice, the endings are just the same all through here. Neuter having these identical nominative and accusatives always. And so even if I caught you off guard with this one, you might want to, before you go to the next slide, try and do the plural. See if you can do the plural, and even if it seems very simple, it will also be a good review for you and good practice. So do that, and then go to the next slide. So for the plural, I hope this is what you got. Pigri, pigrorum, pigris, pigros, pigris, pigre, pigrarum, pigris, pigras, pigris, pigra, pigrorum, pigris, pigra, pigris. Again, neuter agreeing. So if you never mastered that in first form Latin, I'm sure you did. But if you're having any problems, here's a good chance to review. Make sure you're getting all of these right. So when you're ready, let's go to the next slide. If you feel like you need more practice with this, make sure you get all your workbook materials filled out and get those checked, and that you have everything good and well. And the next slide, we're going to do an oral drill, which will be, I will give you something to translate orally without checking in your book or anything like that. See if you can just do it, and then I will give you answers to these things. So we will try that on the next slide when you are ready. All right, for the oral drill, I think what I'll do is we'll begin this by, as a little warm up, I'll give you something in Latin, and I'll wait a few seconds or however long seems okay for you to rack your brain and maybe come up with an answer and see how you do with this. So this will be an adjective and a noun. And let's see. So the first one I'll give you is kind of a funny one. My students always like these kind. Canem egrum. Canem egrum. All right, you notice probably right away that was in the accusative case. Canem egrum means sick dog. Sick dog. Now, we didn't say sicker than a dog, just a sick dog. Let's try another one. These are in different cases, so it might be good for you to notice and even say which case. Now, that was accusative. I'm sure you noticed that. How about liber sacer? Liber sacer. Okay, that one could be a little bit tricky because liber sacer means sacred book, and you might have been confused thinking liber meant free. So we're going to talk more about that when we're done with the oral drill. That there are a lot of words, well, several, a handful of words, I think four that are based with liber in some form, but there's a verb means one thing, there's an adjective, there's a noun. So here, this is liber. There's two nouns I think that are like this, but liber is a book, and then sacer, at least that part, think about that, sacer, sacred book is what we would have. And sacred book is in the nominative. You can tell because liber sacer is also gives it away. There's no ending to it. No ending that would be expected. It's just The ending tells you nominative. Let's try another one. We'll try maybe two more of these Latin to English, and then we'll try a few going English into Latin, which I'll give you a little bit more time for. So let's try this one. Virum dextrum. Virum dextrum. And what does that mean? Virum dextrum. And hopefully you were thinking right man or right hand man. Right man or right hand man. Virum dextrum. And if it sounded weird at all, it's because it is in a certain case. And what is the case? Virum dextrum. This would be the accusative case. Let's try one more. Milites integri. Milites integri. All right, this would probably seem a little bit easier. You have uninjured soldiers. Milites integri. Uninjured soldiers you have here. And this one is in which case? Hopefully you said nominative plural. If it were nominative accusative, or I'm sorry, accusative plural, what would it be? Okay, hopefully you thought of milites integros. So miles, militis stays the same, nominative and accusative in the plural, of course, third declension, milites, milites, but the adjective can come in and give us help. Integri, we know has to be nominative plural, integros would be accusative plural. Now let's look at doing a few of these going from English into Latin. So let's do, we had canem egrum. Let's try sick horse. Sick horse. Okay, hopefully, here you said equum egrum. Oh, this is as a direct object. Let's put it in the nominative. So sick horse, what would it be? Equus egrus. Equus egrus. Let's try another one. How about beautiful houses? Nominative. Beautiful houses. Okay, hopefully you're getting this one. Domus pulchre. Domus pulchre. Remember, domus, fourth declension, but it's feminine. Domus, even though it has the us sound, domus is feminine, so you have to say pulchre, and then you know that it's feminine. Domus pulchre. And let's try one more of these. Uninjured leader. Uninjured leader in the nominative. Okay, hopefully you got this as dux integer. Dux integer. Uninjured leader. Dux integer. Let's say you were going to put this in the accusative though. What would you do? Okay, I hope you would say ducem integrum. Ducem integrum. So you can see integer would become integrum. All right, that's good practice. I hope that you were getting those right. If you were, and if not, it just takes more practice. So keep working at it and you'll get better as you go along. Latin is all about confidence, but confidence only comes from practicing. So if you're lacking confidence, you need to practice more. And if you practice and practice, you won't be able to help it. So good luck. I will see you on the next slide and we'll talk about those words that are very similar to each other. The liber, libero, all of these. See you there. Okay, these are listed at the top of page 15. And we can see, first of all, we have a verb. Libero, liberare, liberavi, liberatus. Four principal parts of this to set free verb. Then we have an adjective, which is what we just learned. Liber, libera, liberum. And there is also this noun that looks just like it. But we have liber, libri, which means book. So this one though, liber libri, book, is which gender? Masculine, yes, liber libri. And notice that this one contracts. That's the difference between the noun and the adjective. So where you would have liberorum, you would have librorum for the noun. For the adjective, liberorum. For the genitive plural, sorry I didn't say that, liberorum. But for of the books, let's put that genitive plural, librorum. So you have the contraction. So that's the difference. Here you can see the E stays, but here it goes away. And then to make it even more confusing with this one, liberi liberorum. So here's something that could sound tricky, where I just said free liberorum. This also can be children or liberi. These can be mistaken, but children is always plural, and this is another noun form, but this can be mistaken for the adjective. And so you've got to be careful with these, be aware of it, and being aware of it usually will take care of things. If you've got these memorized, it could be free as an adjective, it could be children, could be book, and then there's this verb that looks a lot like it, to set free. So be aware of this, and you'll know, I think, from context at first, even when you see these, you'll know what's being said. Is it a noun or is this an adjective modifying something? And if it's a noun, which noun is it? Does it retain the the ER, or does that go away in the plural? And that's how you'll be able to tell the difference. So seeing it a lot of times will help you. Now we can talk about the dative of indirect object, which you know something about this already, but we'll delve into it a little bit more, do a little bit of practicing with it, and make sure you're keeping up with your worksheets. That's the best practice. And I will see you on the next slide when you're ready. Okay, this is basically what's said kind of in the middle of page 15, and it's very obvious. An indirect object commonly goes with verbs of giving and telling. So you say, I give the horse to the farmer. I told a story to my mother, or something like this. I announced the news to the legate. I showed the plan to Caesar. Do, give, narro, tell, nuncio, announce, demonstro, show. So these kind of verbs you can tell just logically. It's the same in English as in Latin, that these very often will require, not always, I shouldn't say require, they just commonly have indirect objects. So keep that in mind. It's certain verbs where it makes sense to have an indirect object. When you see do somewhere, you can start looking for an indirect object. So, all right, let's go to the next slide and we'll look at this a little bit more. Okay, here we have a Latin example for looking at these. This is the same example that's in your bullet points 2 and 3. Let's see, 3 and 4, the third and fourth on page 15. So here's you can read over the ways to diagram sentences like these and how to label the different words. What I think is most important actually in all of this is that in the third bullet point from the top, it says in English, the direct object can be expressed in two ways. We can use word order or a prepositional phrase, to or for, to talk about the indirect object. So here we have Maria, Marco, Rosam, dedit. So we start with the nominative, Mary, and then we look over here at the verb, dedit, gave, and what she gave, of course, is going to be in the accusative, a rose, and then Marco, to Marcus, to Mark, I guess we could just say. So in English, we can say that either the first way, option 1, that it shows with word order, Mary gave Marcus a rose. Or we can use a prepositional phrase like to. Mary gave a rose to Marcus. So either way is fine. You can translate that either way in all of your exercises and your quizzes and homework, and it means the same thing. Mary gave Mark a rose, or Mary gave a rose to Mark. Latin doesn't need the preposition, they just use the dative case, which is handy for Latin. But that's all that you have to do. We'll practice with another sentence that I've made up and see how you do with that on the next slide when you're ready. So here's a sentence that I put together. This is the last little bit for the lesson. So we'll just do this and I'll show you the answer on the next one, although I'm sure you can do it very easily. So at this point, you should be ready, if you haven't, to finish all the workbook assignments for this week. And if you haven't done them, that's okay. We can do this first and then be sure and go and do those. And at the moment, especially looking at dative of indirect object, focusing on that, whatever workbooks assignments are pertaining to that will be important. So Marcellus, a Latin name, Marcellus panem regi dedit. Now I wanted to do this one because you should know all of these words, I think, and I wanted to use different declensions. So we have panem from panis panis, and we have regi from rex regis. So this one may not be so easy to tell, but hopefully you're spotting where the nominative is, Marcellus, of course. Then you go to the verb, dedit, once again. And then we have an object, panem, and then we have this dative, regi, our dative. So that's the indirect object. Think about this for a minute. You might write it down or just think about what's being said. Probably very easy for you. And if it's not, don't worry. You just keep practicing and it will become easier. And when you're ready, go to the next slide and you'll see the answer for this one. So here you go. Marcellus panem regi dedit means Marcellus gave bread to the king. To the king. The other way of saying it would be what? Think to yourself. Word order. And hopefully what you were thinking is Marcellus gave the king bread. It's interesting that that works for us in English like this with the word order, but we have those two options, and so you can translate it either way, as I was saying. Keep up the good work and really focus on getting these datives. Make sure you get all of these second declension adjectives. There will be a little bit of review, I think, at the end of this unit, but it's best to get everything as you're going through. So Latin compounds on itself. So even if you feel a little bit rusty by this time, still the fourth week, you're a month back into getting all these Latin assignments and everything. But if you keep going forward and digging deep where you're at, you'll see that things relate to other things. It's interesting, these adjectives might have seemed like something scary before you started them, or especially when you first got your second form book and you started looking into it. But then you realize when you just look closely at the chart, read through the lesson, do the practices, that the endings are the same. So you've basically learned everything. You just have to notice these few things, like the nominative singular is different, and then which ones contract and which ones don't. Once you have that, it's all the same as the skills that you worked so hard on last year. So be encouraged by that. And I'll see you on the next and final slide. So the end of week 4, congratulations. Now I guess you can put together everything that you've learned, and I think you probably have a quiz that is assigned for you. But make sure you feel good about this week before you end it. Make sure you feel like you got everything out of it and that you're ready then to move on. So the next time we meet, we'll be talking about the third, the fourth, and the fifth declension. It'll be a good review with lots and lots of vocabulary. One of the words that's in there is panis. Another one is rex. So you'll be back into all of that. And I think that's it for this week. So enjoy the weekend, and I will see you again soon. God bless you all.